Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and as we talked about yesterday, or as you may have heard, many different sources are now corroborating that a big Nintendo Direct will be happening next week, towards the end of the week, right before, or right on, depending on the time zone, of Mario's 40th anniversary, the 40th anniversary of the Super Mario Bros. Series, where we are at least expecting news for Mario's anniversary, perhaps an anniversary release, but it is also being said that this is going to be a bigger Direct, perhaps the general we've all been waiting for so many months already. But it looks like we now have some more clues that could be telling us a little bit more about what this Direct may entail and what may be coming soon after, and also further hinting what exactly is going to be Nintendo's closing lineup for Switch 2 in this year of 2025. But before going forward, let me simply ask that if you do find yourself enjoying my videos, to subscribe. I would appreciate it. But let's dive into some of this recent chatter regarding this Nintendo Direct. So earlier today, friend of the channel Attack the Backlog said this on Twitter. I'm hearing more of this, i.e. Mario being in the main Direct rather than in an anniversary Direct. It's unclear whether it's due to the delays I've heard about, but that's my own feeling speculation, and this is also in response to Nash Weedle also hearing about potential delays when it comes to Mario Anniversary stuff. Now, to be clear, they're not talking about like massive delays, like there won't be a Mario Anniversary Direct or anything like that, but there are some things having to do with Mario's Anniversary that may be getting pushed back, like perhaps a trailer for the Mario movie. They may want a little bit more time to polish that up, and so perhaps they are not going to have one entire Mario Anniversary Direct. They're going to save maybe a Mario movie Direct a little bit later on, and instead they are going to dedicate the rest of the Mario Anniversary stuff as a big part of a bigger Direct all together in one place, as we've been sort of suggesting as a possibility over these last couple weeks. But Attack the Backlog also pointed out this person who I was unfamiliar with, BFun, a journalist, who has also apparently heard about similar delays. As it's translated here, if a Mario 40 Years Direct has to be announced, it will be today. But, from what I'm hearing, there might have been a little delay. Result? We could have a big General Direct plus Mario's 40th anniversary on September 12th. And last I checked, there hasn't been any announcement for a Mario Anniversary Direct here on Tuesday, so perhaps what BFun has been hearing alongside Nash Weedle and Attack the Backlog is about right, and these things are going to be combined into one bigger presentation next week, as others have reported of there being something happening on specifically September 12th. But another friend of the channel, Nintendo Prime, said this on Twitter. Mario could be part of a general, second Direct then becomes Metroid Prime 4? I don't know, I'm really behind on what's happening, and this was in response to some information that Nash would have put out there from a podcast he was a part of, where different things are talked about potential delays, and there still being 2 Directs, and there being a big general next week. All that was discussed. And Nash would actually responds to Nate to sort of clarify on what's been going on. Right now, that is what is being said. The 2 Directs from what he has heard, and maybe delays for some of the Mario Anniversary stuff. He also says, though, I expected the Metroid Direct a little later, but if they have advanced it, it is welcome, and this gets me thinking about when this Metroid Direct might happen. We'll get to that. And so basically, instead of us getting Mario Anniversary news this week, we are waiting until next week where it's all going to be combined pretty much. Will the movie also be included in this bigger Direct? I'm unsure. I could see them saving that for another time. Maybe it's all there. Maybe they treat this kind of like how they handled the 2018 Summer Nintendo Direct, where the first half was about everything else for Switch 1, and then the second half was all about Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Could they do a Direct like that, where they give us all the release dates we need, maybe they tease 1 or 2 things for next year? That's all done in about 30 minutes or so, and then the last 15 minutes or so is just about Mario's anniversary. I could honestly see something like that. Like, imagine it going down like this. We get the Nintendo Direct, it happens next week on Friday, right? And Nintendo tells us it's going to be a combo Direct. They say that they're going to talk about just general things for Switch 2 and Switch 1, but also a little bit about Mario's anniversary, something like that, to tip us off on how it's going to be handled. And the Direct opens, and it's a big new trailer for Metroid Prime 4. They give us a release date, and then they say a few weeks later there will be a Metroid Prime 4 Direct, perhaps in early October. And then the Direct starts talking about everything else. We get a Hyrule Warriors trailer, a release date for that, all the different third-party things, more info on Kirby Air Riders, updates on other Nintendo games, ones that have been announced, maybe like Tomodachi Life, or maybe like things that haven't been announced yet. There could be one big surprise there, maybe towards the end of this portion of the presentation. And then they move on to talk about Mario's anniversary, where they talk about all things relating to the anniversary, park, movie, merchandising, whatever they have to talk about. But then as the penultimate announcement, the second to last thing, they announce a remaster of Galaxy 2, or whatever is going to be the anniversary release for this month of September, and perhaps it comes out a couple weeks later at the end of September, but it's announced here, or it's shadow dropped. That's also a possibility, so we can enjoy it on the weekend of Mario's anniversary. I think that's definitely on the table. But the closer of the show is a teaser for the next 3D Mario, and maybe they simply state 2026. And then all of a sudden you have a Direct like that where they give us all the release dates we need. In the first half, they tease one other 2026 title from Nintendo, and the second half they tease one more in 3D Mario, but they also managed to detail pretty much their entire lineup for the rest of the year. But I think there might be a little bit more, and this would tie into the Metroid Direct. And so the way I'm envisioning things here, right, whether it ends up being shadow dropped or coming out later into September, we get that Mario Anniversary game. That's the September release. Going into October, we know Legends EA is happening on October 16th, but if this idea, which is not really rumor, it's just suggested as speculation because they've heard that there's going to be 2 Directs still in September, even though the Mario Direct part may be combined with the general. So what would be the other Direct? A Metroid Direct. And so maybe this Metroid Direct happens late September or early October. Either way, same difference to me, somewhat soon. And it's in this Metroid Direct they give us a full blowout of Metroid Prime 4, but also they shadow drop Metroid Prime 2 and 3 for early October. If the Mario Anniversary game ends up being shadow dropped for mid-September, there would actually be a healthy window of time to put out something else in between this anniversary release and Pokemon, right? So Metroid Prime 2 and 3 at the end of September or early October would fit really well there. And these wouldn't be substantial releases, right? They would basically be just slightly upscaled Prime 2 and 3 with mouse controls, and maybe they have an update for Prime Remastered as well. But that's when we get our Metroid Direct and maybe a shadow drop of 2 and 3, late September, early October. And then we have Legends EA, October 16th, as we already know. And then I think we get Metroid Prime 4. I've talked about this before a few times, but I think Metroid Prime 4 is either coming out in the very last week of October, October 30th, or November 6th, the first week of November. And my reasoning behind this is, one, I think they would want to put out Metroid Prime 4 sooner than later, as in before Black Friday, to take full advantage of the holiday sales impact. 2, every single year for the last so many years, at least throughout the entire Switch era, Nintendo's made sure to have some sort of published title in either the last week of October or the first week of November. And currently, there's nothing positioned there, so I think Metroid Prime 4 actually slots in quite nicely. And reminder for those who want to say they wouldn't do that because of Pokemon or Kirby, no, the October and November months oftentimes have 3 to 4 published Nintendo titles. Currently, we only have 2, there need to be more. This is the biggest time of the year for sales, so there would be more published titles during this period of time. And if you wait later, then you're actually worsening Metroid's chances to succeed in terms of sales. So sometime in that 2-week window, not to mention we do have the art book, the official collaboration of the Metroid Prime 3 1-3 visual retrospective coming out October 28th. So the timing is very curious there. But then after that, November 20th, we get Kirby Air Riders. That part's already confirmed. But then after that, how does Nintendo close out the year? This Direct, I'm almost certain, will tell us what that will be. Will they give us a specific release date for Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment? Could that maybe be the early December title to round out Nintendo's closing lineup for 2025? I think there's a fantastic chance it could be that. Nintendo has listed Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment as a winter release. Winter takes place between December through February. December is part of this year, so it could happen then. However, there is also the possibility that it falls into the later parts of winter, like January or February. We'll be circling back to that. But something that should also be mentioned, we still have that weird description from Nintendo of Australia on YouTube where they said the game was releasing in spring. Spring in Australia takes place between September and November. So with this description from Nintendo of Australia, an official page from Nintendo, right? Granted, a small page. They don't get that much attention in Australia on their YouTube page, but it's still an official listing here. So what's going on? Could it be a mistake? Is it perhaps a subtle hint that Age of Imprisonment is going to come out this year? Typically with release windows, there's usually some wiggle room there, and they don't always fall exactly into the season they're suggesting, give or take a month, right? So conceivably, this could mean Age of Imprisonment comes out in December, but then also we consider the winter timing. Conceivably, that could still somehow mean late November or maybe even early March, right? But I would say, given that we have these two different seasons being listed here, I think I'm actually leaning in the direction of Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment being the December release. But something that has me figuring perhaps otherwise is this whole idea of Nintendo using 2026 as a big celebration of Zelda throughout the year to celebrate The Legend of Zelda for its 40th anniversary. And so they may want to actually have Age of Imprisonment come out in January or February as an early release for 2026, where they will be celebrating Zelda's history throughout the entire year. We have recently heard a rumor that there would be some key dates throughout the year of 2026 for The Legend of Zelda, and so if there's something to this rumor there, maybe Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment is actually coming out January or February instead. Certainly conceivable. They haven't told us that Age of Imprisonment is coming out this year, so we shouldn't assume it's coming out this year. You could predict it, and I think there's a solid chance it is, but my point is, we don't know for sure. We're going to learn probably next week from what we're hearing here. But what's most interesting to me is the idea of this game not coming out this year, because then that would then have us wondering, well, what is coming out in December? And looking throughout the games that have come out in December over the Switch era, of the 8 previous years of Switch, 5 of those 8 years, Nintendo has made sure to have a published title. Most recently in 2024, it was Fitness Boxing 3. In 2023 and 2022, it was nothing. In 2021, it was Big Brain Academy. In 2020, it was Fitness Boxing 2. In 2019, it was nothing. In 2018, it was Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And then in 2017, at the very beginning of the month, it was Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And so 3 out of the last 8 years, there was nothing. Also 3 out of the 8 years, it was something more casual-centric. And then 2 out of the 8 years, it was something more core-centric. But these core-centric titles, Smash Bros. And Xenoblade, came out in the first 2 years of Switch 1. So given that this is the launch year of Switch 2, Nintendo came out with the Switch 2 in June, not even earlier in the year like Switch 1 that came out back in March of 2017, we could be looking at a more densely packed lineup to close out the year. And not necessarily with casual-centric titles, but more so core-centric titles, because that's who Nintendo's most likely appealing to pick up the Switch 2 early on. Something like a Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment would have been a good fit, but could there have been something else? Well, like I said, I'm going to officially acknowledge that maybe we get nothing in December. I think it's unlikely because it's a launch year Switch 2. And maybe it could be something casual-centric, but I also think it's a little unlikely because I think they'd be more core-centric in this launch year Switch 2. However, let's say it is something that's core-centric, but it's not Hyrule Warriors. What releases in December? Some people have considered that maybe Metroid Prime 4 does not come out late October, early November, and that's the December release. I don't think that's the best outcome for Metroid, but it's certainly a possibility. Some others might bring up the possibility of us seeing Splatoon Raiders come out in December. That is announced, and we do not know when it's coming out. It's only to be determined. They haven't told us it's coming out in any particular season. They haven't told us if it's coming out next year or this year. So it is on the table. Am I expecting it to come out December? No, but we don't really know what it would be. I also personally feel like that while I think there's a solid chance that you would want to have some sort of core-centric title come out in December, I'm not sure something that would be announced in this September Direct would have enough of a healthy turnaround for December. Like, that would be a very short turnaround. Plausible, but maybe not the best choice here, unless it's something that is set up to enjoy evergreen sales, which may have us leaning back towards, well, maybe there is some sort of casual game that could come out in December. What if there's like a Switch Sports Resort, for example, that comes out in December? Might be kind of a good idea, but I also kind of feel like a game like that, Nintendo will want to come out sooner so people can buy it for the holidays, right? And yes, they can still do that in early December, but you are missing that Black Friday period. Something else I'm going to throw out as a possibility, though, is maybe instead of it being a totally new game or something that's already been announced, it's actually some sort of new Switch 2 edition release. So it's something that already exists, but would see enhancements, possibly with new content in December. To throw something out as a possibility, maybe a Pikmin 4 Switch 2 edition, there have been some murmurings of that, or maybe some kind of Xenoblade Chronicles Switch 2 edition. We've seen a few different things in regards to Xenoblade seeing enhancements on Switch 2. The 60 FPS mode in the data mines for Xenoblade Chronicles X, the recent post from Monolith Soft that seems to be showing a different version of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Maybe Nintendo wants to modernize the entire Xenoblade series in one fell swoop that's announced during the Switch 2 Direct, and it's all announced to be happening in December. Games that have already come out, but giving people another reason to go back to them, maybe also for Xenoblade Chronicles X, because that game came out earlier in the year, give people another reason to buy that game, reminded that it came out this year, a substantial release, and since the Switch 2 editions would already exist, people would be coming back to them, considering them every time they pick up Switch 2, and they could have some evergreen sales there. Probably minor because it's Xenoblade, but maybe something. Now, you might be wondering, well, which Xenoblade? Because there's so many. Well, some of them maybe just get free patches, but maybe like Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and 3 get like a Switch 2 edition. Somewhat similar to Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 editions. Not as expensive, but nice performance upgrades and overall resolution improvements that make the games worthwhile and would have some people considering picking them up when they pick up the console, or just getting the upgrades digitally if you already own the games. At this point, I feel pretty good in thinking that there's going to be a Mario Anniversary release in September. We are going to get Metroid Prime 4 in between Pokemon and Kirby. December is the part that I'm still unsure exactly on how it's going to go. Ignoring all the anniversary implications, I do feel like Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment makes the most sense for December, but there are a variety of possibilities. What do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.